You're listening to TJ's One of Us for the Always Next Year Podcast Studio Network. You can find the team on our Twitter at ANY Podcast. You can also find us on our website, www.alwaysnextyearpodcast.com. And now, to bring us in, the Jackdaws.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such eager my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky son, still happy life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of TJ's One of Us. This is a post-draft edition. We've waited about a week now. I'm joined here by Rob. Rob, sir, how are you?
Doing just fine. Humidity's killing me, but aside from that, can't complain.
It's not pleasurable. It is truly, truly not pleasurable. Not unlike right now, 76ers Twitter is not a pleasurable place to exist in, so it's catching up with the remainder of Philadelphia Phillies sports right now. Before we get into it, you put out our first written piece since, well, your last piece, since we are so not accustomed to writing. There were a handful of 76ers things on there. But real quick, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're aiming to do weekly?
Okay, well, basically, it's called 15 Thoughts, and yes, it is a ripoff of Elliot Friedman's 31 Thoughts that he puts on, I believe it's Sportsnet.
Yep.
But yeah, Elliot Friedman's stuff is all hockey related. Mine is all over the place. It's mostly Philly sports related. Some of it is completely not sports related at all. It's literally just a collection of 15 thoughts that come to my mind throughout the course of the week, and I write them out in the order in which they come to me, so they're completely in no order whatsoever. And yeah, it's just basically a way for me to get my thoughts out and for people to experience the weird shit that goes on in my mind on a daily basis.
So I enjoyed editing it and putting it up on the site. So without giving the entirety of the article away, what was your favorite point that you put in there?
I think the favorite point was the point I made about Californication being a great show.
It's fantastic. I did laugh at that. And the Marcy of Doylestown, if you're out there, Rob wants you.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Those familiar with the show will understand that. If you're not familiar with Californication, by the way, you should probably watch that show.
It is a very good show.
It's fantastic. It's
just don't watch it with little kids around.
Why not? You can.
But
terrible life decision for some people, but for others, it's just a quick advancement into adulthood. But we're going to reflect on the draft right now and kind of the state of the Philadelphia Phillies. See, I knew I was going to do it. I've done nothing but in cap we trust stuff for the last week and a half for the most part. But
you're in the mood. Gene Stewart had a walk-off.
I am in the mood. Yeah, it was good. But we're going to reflect on things for the 76ers, since this is the TJ's One of Us segment. We're going to reflect on the draft first. The 76ers had the 24th overall pick. They traded the rights to that pick, and with Boston, they moved up 4 slots to take a guy that they thought was going to fall somewhere in the mid to high teens. So they got him at 20, and that is Matisse Thybulle. So for anyone who does not know who he is very similar to last year's first-round pick in Zaire Smith in terms of he's definitely a defensive specialist, and his shot is definitely a work in progress, but he's an athletic freak and very, very defensive-minded, which is something that plays well for the 76ers and Brett Brown. Think Andre Iguodala, which is the same comp that I kind of gave for Zaire last year with his freak athleticism as well. What's something that you're kind of excited about with the Matisse pick?
I'm just excited that he's a defense-first kind of guy. The Sixers badly need that. They struggled defensively last year. I think that hurt them in the playoffs. So having a guy who can be that lockdown defender and adds a little bit of offense to the mix as well, I like it. All the starters that they have on the court right now, and I'm not saying he's going to be a starter next year. I don't think he will be, but the starters that they put out on the court, they're great offensive players. Some of the guys, Joel's a pretty decent defender. Ben's okay. Jimmy Butler, hopefully he'll be back. He's a decent defender, but they lack a little bit defensively. So Matisse Thybulle hopefully will make up for that in the future.
Yeah, see, for me, I thought the first unit defensively is pretty fantastic. The weakest of links there being the J.J. Redick But he's a guy who his defense greatly improved in the last 2 years or so. For me, the biggest hole in our defense was when you began to kind of mix that first and second unit. The communication wasn't there. I don't know that. I mean, in today's NBA, you don't really have true positions anymore. But I felt like that second unit, and any time that you began to bring on 6th, 7th, and 8th guys off the bench there, that the defense really, really suffered. We saw that at the ends of games, things like in Chicago, where it was basically a wide open shot at the end there for their win. And I think that names like Zaire Smith from last year and this year Matisse Thybulle, that strengthens that second unit. That strengthens the defense throughout a 48-minute game. And to me, that again, it is incredibly important. We all went into this draft knowing two things. We knew that at some point we wanted to address a perimeter defender such as Thybulle. We also knew we needed shooters. So we didn't do that until our last second-round pick that we ended up actually keeping. And that was Mariel Shayok. I will be honest with you. I had no idea who the hell he was until I began to watch tape and stuff on him. Tape, because I'm 105 years old. YouTube videos and highlight videos and things of that sort. He's kind of the shooter. He's definitely an older guy. He came in. That was the joke so far. He's also definitely in the running for Tyrone Hill Awards. That man is not attractive. But yeah, so he's kind of the shooter there. That's pretty much what you're going to expect from him off the bench, is a guy who's going to, be that 3-and-D type of guy. Nothing overly sexy about that. Nothing overly sexy about the draft. But one thing that you and I texted back and forth about fairly often, and again, all over 76ers, almost called it Phillies Twitter again, over 76ers Twitter, was the fact that we came in with a plethora of second-round picks and we traded the rights to almost all of them. What was your thought going out throughout that draft?
Well, I think they did the right thing moving up to pick Thybulle, because I think that if they didn't, he would have gone before them. So I don't really have a problem with that. And the NBA draft is only 2 rounds. So trading second-round picks, these second-round picks usually don't materialize right away. If they do, they go through a few years in the D-League, or whatever they call it now, before they reach the NBA.
Sure.
And the Sixers, they're in win-now mode. So they're not, trying to have that kind of patience to draft these second-rounders and wait for them to develop. They want guys who can make an immediate impact. So I have no problem with them going ahead and dealing these second-round draft picks.
Yeah, I think in the moment there was a lot of frustration. There were different players there that, as we saw them begin to slide, we were like, oh, this is good. This is someone that that can truly fit that shooter's role for the Philadelphia 76ers, and they would go ahead and trade those rights. I'll be honest. So I started dozing throughout this draft, and we took Fernando, or whatever the hell, the ridiculously huge, strength-wise, dude from Maryland. And I was excited. I was like, oh, good. That's a solid backup for Joe. That's a solid big and presence down there. So I tweeted about it. And I was like, oh, this is great. Someone who was not sleeping during the draft, unlike me, immediately tweets out who's going to tell him. And I'm like, we traded that pick too? I was like, you fall asleep for 5 seconds and you miss the 76ers swapping out second-round picks for cash. So it did piss me off. I did have to delete my first ever tweet for any other reason other than grammatical errors that made me insane. But it was that kind of a night, it was just every time, it was Sixers were on the clock, it was trading rights to somebody, and coming away with, the two main names that we talked about there. And I think what you said kind of hits it on the head there. They're in a position, and Elton Brand kind of echoed that in his post-draft conference there, that they do need players that can make an impact, even on a second unit, or if they get down to the, 10th, 11th, 12th guys on the bench, they need to know that they can play NBA playoff minutes, essentially. And you're not going to get that from all those second-round picks. So in the moment, I was frustrated. I've since kind of been okay with it. So we'll see how things go in terms of, Thybulle's. First of all, I hope to God we break our first-round injury habits here in Philadelphia. I would definitely like to see a first-round pick make some sort of actual impact on a season this year.
Yeah, we're going to be watching every single Summer League game and all of camp with our fingers crossed, hoping he doesn't come down awkwardly after a dunk or something like that.
Pretty much. So another thing that happens this time of year, leading into to June 30th at 5, 6 o'clock, whatever the hell the time is that free agency does officially open. It happens quick in the NBA, right? Far quicker than most other leagues. So I would expect, in that legal-ish tampering period that we're going to start hearing a lot of different things. One thing we're already hearing is the possibility of a sign-and trade involving Jimmy Butler. What's your feel on that?
Dumbest thing ever. Because right now, the sign-and trade would be with Houston. And the only reason they want that is because they don't have the cap room to sign them as it is. Mm-hmm. And they were offering, I think, Eric Gordon, Clint Capella, and there was like 2 or 3 other players involved there, maybe a draft pick.
We would have gotten picks and Gordon.
Yes. And, well, I know that Capella's name was definitely in there as well.
And that was going to go to Boston.
Something like that. It's confusing, but if I'm the Sixers, that's not enough in exchange for Jimmy Butler. And the Sixers have leverage here because of the fact that Houston needs to do this to get Jimmy Butler. So if I'm the Sixers, I'm just saying no. I'm straight up saying no, we're not doing that. We're not going to help you guys out.
By doing that, you do essentially risk any leverage that you have with Butler in terms of acquiring assets in the future. We can offer something to Jimmy Butler that no other team can offer. We can offer more money, in that extra year there. So in doing that, even if Jimmy doesn't want to stay here in Philadelphia, which I still kind of find hard to believe, I still believe we offer him the best of circumstances for the remainder of his career, especially we've talked about it a lot, with the Thibodeau minutes on that body. We can kind of offer a fairly unique set of circumstances here that teams like Houston really probably can't offer. I still don't buy it 100%, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't slightly nervous. So aside from the sign and trade, there's also been the rumor going around right now of attempting to bring both Kawhi and Jimmy to the Clippers. What would you put odds on for that?
I think that if Jimmy Butler doesn't return to the Sixers, then that's a very real possibility. Because I think Kawhi, it's pretty well known that he wants to go out to the West Coast. LA is close to where he's from. He's from the San Diego area. So him kind of returning home or to his home area is not a far-fetched idea. And if he wants to do that, then I'm sure he would want to bring another star player along with him to kind of build something up there with the Clippers. And Jimmy Butler would be the ideal guy for that. So if Butler doesn't return to the Sixers, I could definitely see the Clippers happening. Also, the Lakers apparently cleared up enough cap space so that they can sign someone to a max deal because Anthony Davis waived his $4 million something or other. I forget the exact term of it, but he waived $4 million, and the Lakers now have enough money for a max deal. So they are now a possibility for Jimmy Butler as well.
The Lakers have holes up and down the roster, so they're going to have to figure out.
They do, but they still have LeBron James and Anthony Davis.
They do. They have one guy who is just, in my opinion, turned into the complete villain of the NBA. I think LeBron James is just... he's gone from everyone's favorite player in the NBA, or most people's favorite player in the NBA. You had the Michael era, then the Kobe era, and then here we are with LeBron. People went from loving him and respecting him to loathing him very quickly in that first year in LA. So to me, I don't know that he's the same guy. And Anthony Davis, I don't trust for anything. I just think he's such a punk, and weaseling his way around. And I know that's what the NBA is now. These guys have more power than in any sport at all. He was going to get to LA or wherever his desired destination was. He was going to get there. But yeah, Jimmy going to LA to join Kawhi, I would say the biggest thing that I would say is that Kawhi, I'm not sure leaves Toronto. He's not going to sign a max deal in Toronto, but it wouldn't shock me if he signed, a 2-year deal worth as much money as they can give him, and maybe a 3rd-year player option, something like that. And they have a really, really good team over there. Obviously, just coming off that championship. If he wants to win another ring or two there, okay, they have the pieces there to do so. He may want to stay, and then look to go to LA to finish out his career on a max deal somewhere. So that's something interesting to follow with him as well. Obviously, Kawhi's name was dropped during the draft. I don't know if you heard that and saw that, stating that he was going to take meetings with the 76ers. And
I heard about the meetings with the Sixers. I actually didn't watch any of the draft, though, so I didn't hear any of that stuff.
Yeah, and naturally, everyone in Philadelphia, suddenly they were no longer pissed at Elton Brand. Then Elton Brand comes out and says, "Trust me, it's all going to make sense soon," in his conference. And everyone's like, "Holy shit, it's happening. We're getting Kawhi." How weird would that be, first of all, after watching that bounce on the rim 87.5 times and then falling, kicking us out the playoffs, and then being like, "Yeah, sure, I'll sign here." How quickly he would go from like the most villainous person in sports history in Philadelphia to, thank fucking God, we've signed Kawhi Leonard. That would be so weird.
It'll be pretty similar to Bryce Harper hitting all those walk-off homers against the Phils and then coming to the Phils in the offseason. I think
it's bigger.
Yeah, it would be bigger because of a Game 7 buzzer beater to knock us out of the playoffs.
Right.
So it would take people a little while to kind of warm up to him, I think, because of...
I don't think it would take anyone long. I think that would be the quickest memory.
I think there might be a little bit of a warming up period just because he ended what could have been a championship season for us. But... there were other circumstances that went into that, but
absolutely,
yeah, people would fall in love with Kawhi though.
Yeah, I think it would
he's a Philly kind of guy. I can tell.
Philadelphia would all of a sudden develop the mind of an all-star reliever and closer. Like, we would all be like, "Fuck it, we don't care what happened last year. I'm ready to go today." With Kawhi Leonard, I think that's pretty much how that would go. But yeah, so first of all, Kawhi, following him this offseason is going to be interesting. I'm hoping to God that, and I think it was you anyway who tweeted out, who said that for the love of God, let's not have another Bryce Harper long saga to figure out where these people go. I think that's where we all are. Let's hope that the NBA is quick the way that it ordinarily is. I do not want to follow these stories for weeks on end.
Well, I actually mentioned something about it in my 15 thoughts.
That's what it was, right?
I think I did put something on Twitter too about that, but yeah. I just hope it doesn't turn into what the LeBron situation was last year, where everybody was 100% certain that LeBron was coming to the Sixers just because of all the rumors and whatnot that were put out there, and then, lo and behold, he never even takes a meeting with the team and he goes out and signs with the Lakers. Right. So I hope it doesn't end up being like that. I hope at least the meeting does actually come to fruition.
So do I. The one thing that we have heard definitively is the fact that, well, one, he is certainly meeting with the Clippers, but that he is going to give Toronto their last, or his last meeting. So he'll walk back to Toronto's front office and say, "All right, this is what I have on the table from X, Y, and Z. What can you do for me here? What's it looking like?" So, which is, it's smart, it's classy. They can offer you what no other team can, and you want to go back there and have some sort of leverage, which in superstars like Kawhi Leonard, you have all the leverage in your name alone. So, he'll be something interesting to follow. Jimmy Butler's name going, to LA, Houston. There's also been a rumor to Brooklyn, which is fine. I guess that Miami wants to bring in a superstar. I read that article today, that they're fairly desperate to bring in a star in an effort to have any sort of attendance there.
They're also cap strapped, though. They can't even afford Butler.
Oh, no, they can't. It would be another one of those, 3-team deals and just a lot of picks and other assets kind of moving in efforts to make that work. But again, that's an interesting thing. He would immediately become the guy and the only guy that for at least the next, 3 years, coming to Philadelphia, going to Houston, he's going to play third fiddle on both of those rosters. So who knows what Jimmy Butler wants. But another one that we've heard so far, this one seems fairly likely if you believe most of the sources who are putting things out here, if not back to the 76ers for Tobias Harris. It feels like Brooklyn's the spot. Brooklyn right now has been the name or the sole place that has been tied back to him right now with any sort of real credibility. Better fit. We saw them in the playoffs. Where do you think Tobias Harris fits better with? Here in Philadelphia or in Brooklyn?
I think that he fits better here in Philadelphia. He has a chance to be a part of a championship-winning team here. I think that he developed some chemistry with the other starters out on the court during that, what was it, only 10 games that they had in the regular season and then the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So we saw him build up chemistry then. I think that while that is the case here in Philadelphia, there's certainly a chance to do big things in Brooklyn, especially if they end up getting Kyrie. They're also in on Kevin Durant. They're one of the top, I think they're like the third favorite team to get him according to Vegas.
Yeah.
So Brooklyn could be building something, and
I think Brooklyn's going to be really good for a really long time.
Yeah, they certainly have a chance to do some damage in the Eastern Conference if they're able to pull off this offseason that they're supposedly about to have. But I think that Tobias Harris is a better fit with the 76ers. I know I've talked before about I'd rather move on from him and use that extra money to fill out the bench and get some depth. And I still kind of am of that mindset, but at the same time, I don't want a productive player like him going within the conference. If we're going to lose Tobias Harris, I want to see him go out west.
And he may, he's spoken about it before. He actually spoke about it on JJ Redick's podcast on the Ringer. That he did enjoy, being out west, being out there in LA, during a short time with the Clippers. But Brooklyn is another really interesting team to follow. They've said that they were committed to going after Kyrie, and then they said we're not going to go for Kyrie unless he can bring Kevin Durant with him. There's thought that Kevin Durant goes to the Lakers. There's thought that Kyrie goes to the Lakers. There's thought that, like we said, they both go to Brooklyn, it seems more likely than the previous scenarios that I mentioned. But one interesting thing about that is a guy who kind of bursted out on the scene there in Brooklyn. D'Angelo Russell would be the odd man out in any of those situations or circumstances, and he would just go. So it's interesting to sit there and see, does he find his way back to LA? He's been tied to the 76ers right now. I have never been a Russell fan, but there's the connection with Simmons there. We obviously need people who are not afraid to shoot the basketball. I'm not saying he's a great shooter, but he's a willing shooter, and that's something we desperately need. So it's something that I would entertain if we lose out on a name like Tobias Harris, or even Butler for that matter.
D'Angelo Russell was actually one of the better shooters I thought in the NBA last season, or at least one of the most improved. And he's a guy
definitely improved.
Definitely a threat to hit a number of shots from downtown. He has the ability to go off and have a big game, a 40-point game if he's hitting all of his shots. So it would be nice to have him here. I don't think that he would get starter minutes. I think that he would be a sixth man coming off the bench. So maybe it's not the best situation for him. But I think he could be greatly beneficial to the 76ers if they're able to bring him in.
Yeah, look, it's a conversation I would be certainly willing to entertain. I've never truly been that big of a fan of him, but I understand some of the connections and the needs that he would provide here, or holes that he would fill. So something interesting, again, to follow. There's still the likelihood that he goes out west again. Another name, and this will be the last big name that we kind of talk about here, is Kemba Walker. So talks between he and his current front office over there have kind of stalled out, and that isn't really what anyone expected, I think. Right now, Boston is said to be the favorite to land Kemba Walker, which, okay, Boston is Boston. This is, they're going to appeal to people no matter how much of a dumbass Ainge is, like how terribly he treats human beings. They're still going to be a destination city. It's still an NBA franchise that just has so much history behind it. So that's interesting there. But the other thing is the fact that someone from the Painted Lines, the rebranded Painted Lines, they were Philly's front office, one of their Sixers guys was stating that the 76ers are very hot on Kemba Walker, and that they're fully prepared to offer him a max deal. So that's interesting because it's not a name that we had previously had tied to us. And by that logic, now again, this is completely contingent upon if you believe anyone from that website, and they're good over there. They're fine. But Kemba Walker, it basically states if we're definitively hot on him right now, it means to me they probably understand Jimmy's played his last game as a 76er, and this is going to be the ball-dominant guard that we're going to go after and we're going to acquire. Do you think that there is enough here that would pull him from the interest in Boston?
Absolutely. The Sixers, as it stands right now, I think have the most talented starting five. Definitely in the Eastern Conference, maybe even in all of basketball when you consider the fact that Golden State's injured and that Toronto might be losing Kawhi Leonard. The Sixers have as much talent as anybody in the whole league. So they're certainly in a great position to appeal to a guy like Kemba Walker, who has played losing basketball ever since he left college because he's just been on bad teams down in Charlotte. So he has a chance to finally, go somewhere where he can win and Philadelphia is the prime destination for him, especially if Jimmy Butler ends up going elsewhere and they have a need to fill. Kemba Walker could very well be that guy.
Yeah, he is, to me. So, again, because he was so far off my radar, I just genuinely did not believe that that was going to be something, a possibility or even a conversation to be had. When I saw that tweet from, and I can't remember this dude's name, but the PFL guy, I was immediately excited. I was like, all right, well, you know what? He's a hell of a scorer, not good on defense. That's a big thing for me. Obviously, look, he's 6'1", in an NBA or an era of the NBA where there are just so many larger scale guys. So he's limited, in my opinion, especially on the defensive side of the floor. But he adds a potent offense and offensive skill sets that we don't currently have. So it's something definitely to sit there and follow. Like I said, the NBA offseason and free agency happens quick, so we'll have a bunch of stuff up on, or as we hear the news and any types of rumors, we'll have a bunch of it on the AMYP Twitter account. So two less than fun names to talk about, or less sexy names to talk about. Not that they're not fun, they're fine. If you had your choice between these two bigs to come in and be the role-playing big behind Joel Embiid, or if they were going to attempt to play them both on the floor at the same time together, Nerlens Noel, a reunion there, or $100 million to Horford, who's 33 years old.
I'm paying the money to Horford.
Jesus Christ, man.
Horford is a proven veteran. He has more versatility than Nerlens Noel does. A better offensive game, at least, than Nerlens Noel.
He definitely has a better offensive game.
And that's the biggest thing. And plus, Horford, when the Sixers are playing against him, he shuts down Embiid. So if you don't want to play against the guy, bring him in.
Oh, God. He does have Joe's number. He definitely has Joe's number. But to me, I look at him, he's, like I said, 33, 34 years old. Giving him 4 years, I think it would be, for like $100+ million, that to me is just awful use of your cap room and how much money you have. To me, one of the biggest areas that today's offenses don't necessarily run through a center ever, unless you have people like Joel Embiid. If you take Joe off the court, our offensive identity changes. If you put Nerlens Noel there, the offensive identity changes the same as it would have changed last year, except now we have a guy who isn't going to be a minus 19 in 7 minutes of basketball. We have a guy who can hold his own defensively. He's a very good defender and very good rim protector, good rebounder. He was great when he was here in terms of getting the fast break started, which is something we didn't necessarily get the opportunity to have when we had names like Monroe or Boban, as much as we enjoyed him, even Jonah Bolden to some extent. These were things that we didn't get from those guys. This is someone who can immediately transition in as a utility big, and we can kind of get that fast-paced offense rolling again. So for me, for a lesser cap hit, lesser years, I'm a Nerlens guy.
See, normally I would agree with you there. And yes, Nerlens has been around for a few years, but I just like the veteran presence that Horford could bring to a locker room. A guy who's been around the block a number of times, a guy he's never won a championship, but he's always been on very good teams that have been on the cusp of winning a championship. So he's played in a lot of meaningful playoff games. He's had big moments in playoff games before. So I really like that about Horford. And also, I'm just not a fan of bringing back old faces. I never am in any sport, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, whatever. Nerlens, I liked him when he was here during the process years, but it's time to move on. I'm not a fan of bringing back a guy who's been here before.
If Brett Brown and his coach regime was not here anymore, would you be more or less likely to bring back Nerlens Noel?
No.
Same. It would be the same regardless.
It would be the same regardless.
Okay. I very much so disagree. I love what he would be able to bring because I know exactly what he is, and there is an unknown with a guy who's 33, 34 that you're going to give 4 years to. That scares the shit out of me. That's a hell of a financial commitment. And not to say that Nerlens Noel is necessarily a safe bet with some of his injury history and things like that, but to me, it's a safer bet than a 37-year-old making $28 million a year, in that final year of a contract. That's just tough. You spoke about veteran presence there. Would you be more or less willing to go the Nerlens Noel route if they did, in fact, bring Jimmy back, who provides that veteran locker room presence that you're kind of talking about.
If Jimmy comes back, then yes, I will be a little bit more inclined to go the Nerlens route. I would still prefer Horford, but I wouldn't be... And I'm not saying that I would be mad anyway if they end up going the Nerlens route, but I'm just saying I would rather go the Horford route. But with Jimmy coming back, I would be more inclined to go the Nerlens route.
Gotcha. All right, so we'll run through this. This is real quick. We're going to go through if they do, in fact, fail to run it back. There are a couple different scenarios and circumstances here that we got different questions in, so we're going to run through them fairly quickly now because you got a show coming up. If they fail to run it back, what would you personally do? Would you blow it up, and would you trade one of Ben or Joe?
No.
So you still think that they can build a roster with no assets whatsoever going forward that can win championships with a flawed Ben and a virtually guaranteed to be unhealthy for parts of the season Joel Embiid?
Well, see, running back, I'm assuming you're talking about just bringing back Jimmy and Toby, right?
Yeah.
If they don't bring those guys back, there are other options, other routes that they could go where they don't have to, trade away Ben or do some sort of a reset. They could find some other options and really pick up where they left off. Okay. So I
agree.
It's not going to set off any alarms for me if those guys don't come back.
I do worry about so many of these just really prime free agents already going to be locked up into deals. I would be less worried if more guys were taking a 2-year deal, with the 3rd-year player option. And if in 2 years this shit wasn't working out, okay, Philadelphia's a destination right now because Joe's that much better, because Ben's game is that much more evolved. So I'm not blow it up mode. I am not trading either one of those players to rebuild an asset pool. So I'm with you on that one. If it becomes increasingly clear, and as a lot of sources at this point are indicating, that Jimmy Butler has played his last game as a 76er, do you use him for a sign and trade purpose, specifically just to regain assets back? If you knew that you could get a few first-round picks that were unprotected or very limited in protection.
If it's clear that there's absolutely no chance whatsoever of him coming back, I know I already said that I'm completely against the sign and trade with Houston, but in that circumstance where there's absolutely no shot of him returning to the 76ers, then yes, I would try to shop him for assets because it beats the hell out of just losing him and not getting anything in return.
Obviously it does. Now, what if it were Brooklyn that wanted him and we were going to ship him in conference?
Well, then that changes a little bit because I'm certainly not too keen on making a rival team better. A team that we're going to be competing with in the Eastern Conference. I don't want to help them out. Houston's different because they're out west. We only play them twice a year, and then if we do play them after that, we'll be in the finals. So it's one thing to ship him out west. I would not do it in the Eastern Conference.
I'm pretty much the same right there. And so the last thing is, assuming, again, this is all under the thought that we do not, in fact, run it back, that Toby and that Jimmy do not come back. How confident are you in those two superstars, Brett Brown here with what will undoubtedly be another set of 2 or 3 different rosters within next season and the seasons beyond? How confident are you that they can remain an ultra-competitive style of basketball that could potentially see them go deep into the playoffs each year?
Very confident.
Even without the others?
Very confident. Joel Embiid is that good. Ben Simmons is that good, especially if he develops that jump shot and he starts being a little bit more assertive getting to the basket because he's not afraid to shoot free throws. Those two guys, they're very good basketball players as it is. They're only going to get better. So as long as they continue to progress, this is a very competitive team.
All right. I like it. I don't have that same sense of confidence. I do believe that regardless of how good they both are, I do believe that Joe's window is limited, and I believe that if we do not win and win quickly, I do fear that Ben will want to go out west. So that's always something to look into the future at. But like I said, free agency opens up in less than a week now, so we will have more coverage on that, and as things happen, we will have emergency pods, and hope to God we have really, really exciting emergency pods and not really depressing ones, because I'm so not in the mood to talk about depressing things right now. My baseball team is garbage. Like, my personal baseball team that I play for is garbage. Obviously the Phillies are kicking into gear right now, which is always good, but we are going to Miami, and that never seems to end well. So
especially after what they just did to us.
I know, right? So let's just not have a depressing pod. Let's have a celebratory emergency pod that we got our guys back and that we're running it back and we're confident going forward. Rob, you have any final thoughts on 76ers basketball right now?
My final thought is that I'm still very confident that they are going to run it back. I'm still confident that Jimmy Butler's coming back to Philadelphia. I'm confident that they'll be able to work out at bringing Tobias back, although I'm kind of, as I said before, on the fence because I'd rather have more depth, more bench guys, but I wouldn't be unhappy if he does come back. But going back to my main point, I'm confident that they're going to be able to run it back, and they'll have the same squad next year.
All right, and my final point is I believe that Ben Simmons is 100% going to be a top 6 or 7 player in the NBA this year. I think that he's going to come in with a much improved willingness to shoot, which in turn will help him to continue to develop a real actual jump shot. I don't know if it's going to be left-handed. I don't know if it's going to be right-handed. I don't know if he's going to shoot granny style. I really don't give a shit. I just want him to shoot the damn basketball early and often all year.
Both hands overhead.
There you go. Very 70s-ish. I love it. All right, and then before we close that out, a quick word from our sponsor over at Just Food. Treat yourself. Take it home. Visit our guy Rob over there. Not our podcast Rob, Asian Rob guy from Just Food. They do catering service. They also have an in-shop location in Buckingham Green Shopping Center in Bucks County, PA. It is just above Peddler's Village, if you are familiar. If you do go to his store and shop, they have a ton of different food that you can get there. They also have different jarred things and different desserts. I didn't even realize they had desserts. I just went yesterday and saw that there was an entire shelf of things that I was missing, so that's great for a diet. But they are delicious food over there, and they are a great catering service. Like I said, we've used them for our family events for a couple of years now. But it's Just Food, 215-794-FOOD. That's 215-794-3663. Treat yourself. Take it home. Make sure that you guys also go ahead and subscribe to the show if you're just a casual listener right now. Steal your friends and family's phone and then subscribe to all of our shows through them as well. I promise they'll like you for it, or at least we hope. And then make sure that you subscribe to our Twitter account or follow our Twitter account at ANY Podcast. You can also follow me at Shane_Mead, and you can follow Rob at Radio_Rob. To give you guys a heads up, we will eventually be having a giveaway for this for TJ's One of Us, and it seems to be in memory of TJ's One of Us, as it appears due to a cryptic Instagram post that TJ is no longer one of the 76ers, but will still forever remain one of us. But we have done an autographed Scott Kingery baseball that has gone out to Kevin, one of our followers on Twitter. Rob currently has a Travis Konechny signed puck. That is our next giveaway. We will have one for our Kelly Green Hour, and then we will have one for the show as well. So if you want to win autographed material, tickets, jerseys, different things like that, or AMYP merchandise, we will have giveaways throughout the year. Rob, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. We have your flyer show coming up next, so I know we ran a little bit longer than anticipated. So that'll be it, and we'll see you guys in a few days, hopefully with a celebratory pod.
Fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with a win. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky souls still have me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.